Okay, Google. A good, bright, and beautiful morning. Obviously, you heard me telling Google to turn my studio lights on. All of a sudden realized I was live on voice there. Not normally, so that's all right. But yeah, good morning, everybody. I am so excited about today because today we are going to be going over something really fun and definitely different from what we've covered up to this point. We're starting to get into more the storylines and the storytelling that is Genesis. But one of the really important things that we have to go over when it comes to the stories is we've got to understand who people are, the who, what, where, when, why, how, and that who part of that is what's really important. And for me, I find it really fun. So grab your Bibles, grab your notebook, and let's get into this today because today we're going to talk about Adam and all his kids. And how old were they? Oh my goodness. We'll be right back after this. Grab your Bible, grab your notebook. Let's do it.
You can have all this world. Give me Jesus.
And if you do find any value in this content, do me a favor, click like, subscribe, turn on that notification bell so you don't miss any of my content. And of course, as we've always said, if there is value in this content, then share it with somebody else because when you have something that's awesome and amazing, then you should be sharing it. Now, definitely while we're live and even afterwards, if you'd like, drop a comment in the chat. We'd love to hear it. So thank you, first of all, Fly Fishing for Families. Good morning to you as well. And it's nice to see you. And hopefully we'll have some other people in here like we do most other days. At least today I can see the chat. So that's an awesome, amazing thing because I can see the chat today. So yay for that. Yay, hooray. I can see the chat. All right, let's get into this today because we have a little bit of fun. So for today, I have a little bit of a little piece of tech. I haven't run through it, so you're going to get to see the experiment of it. But first we're going to read the passage. We're going to read all of Genesis 5, which is quite long. It's 32 verses, but a lot of the verses are short. So let's jump into this and let me get this read. And then we're going to jump into the meat and veg, shall we say, of this passage. Here we go. This is the book of the generations of Adam. In the day that God created man in the likeness of God, made he him. Male and female created he them, and blessed them and called their name Adam in the day when they were created. And Adam lived 130 years and begat a son in his own likeness, after his image, and called his name Seth. And the days of Adam after he had begotten Seth were 800 years. And he begat sons and daughters. And all the days that Adam lived were 930 years, and he died. And Seth lived 105 years and begat Enos. And Seth lived after he begat Enos 807 years and begat sons and daughters. And all the days of Seth were 912 years. And he died. And Enos lived 90 years and begat Canaan. And Enos lived after he begat Canaan 815 years and begat sons and daughters. And all the days of Enos were 905 years. And he died. And Canaan lived 70 years and begat Mahalalel. And Canaan lived after he begat Mahalalel 840 years and begat sons and daughters. And all the days of Canaan were 910 years, and he died. And Mahalalel, lived 65 years and begat Jared. And Mahalalel lived after he begat Jared 830 years and begat sons and daughters. And all the days of Mahalalel were 895 years, and he died. And Jared lived 162 years, and he begat Enoch. And Jared lived after he begat Enoch 800 years, and begat sons and daughters. And all the days of Jared were 962 years, and he died. And Enoch lived 65 years and begat Methuselah. And Enoch walked with God after he begat Methuselah 300 years and begat sons and daughters. And all the days of Enoch were 365 years. And Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. And Methuselah lived 180 and 7 years, and he begat Lamech. And Methuselah lived after he begat Lamech 782 years, and begat sons and daughters. And all the days of Methuselah were 969 years, and he died. And Lamech lived 182 years, and begat a son. And he called his name Noah, saying, This same shall comfort us concerning our work and toil of our hands, because of the ground which the Lord hath cursed. And Lamech lived after he begat Noah 595 years, and begat sons and daughters. And all the days of Lamech were 777 years, and he died. And Noah was 500 years old, and Noah begat Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And that's where we're going to end. Now, I have a little bit of a fun graphic today that we're going to give a try to, and hopefully this works. But we're going to look at where people lived and who lived during whose lifetime. Because when you have Adam living 900 and something years, and the total of all of these years is over 1,600 years from when Adam was created to when Noah, till the flood, actually, is what we're going to talk about. Because if you notice here, it hasn't said that Noah has died. It just says Ham, Shem, and Japheth. And we're going to talk about this because this is the godly line of Noah. This is the line that leads us to Noah, and these were all godly men. So these fathers are all considered part of a godly line. However, their offsprings and the other offsprings, not so much. And we're going to show and demonstrate this. And this particular chapter sets the stage for what we're going to come up to in chapter 6. This is kind of like the backstory. This is the prequel to Noah's story. And that's why this part happens to be a little bit important. So we're going to look at our graphic here. I'm going to see if I can do this correctly. All right, there we go. And we're going to take that off. All right, so let me do one thing here, because not only do I need to do that, I need to do that. All right. So as you can see in the first graphic, let's see here. If I go, we're going to try something. We're going to try this. Yes, and we're going to pause it. We're going to pause it for just a second. So, and let's change the camera so that we can see it. All right, so first of all, you can see that Adam was created, and we can see this is a timeline from Adam to Noah. All right, this is the timeline from Adam to Noah. And you can see that Adam was created in year 0. Now, it's a little bit hard to see, but for those of you that are members, this is actually in all your member resources in the full chart that we're going to reveal here as I go along is in the member resources. So if you want to see this, that's in that member resources. All right. So it says right here in verse 1 and 2 that Adam, let's see here. Actually, you'll see here, verse 1. So we're going to do verses 1 through 5. Adam was created in year 1. So he's the only one that was created and not born. Was created, or actually year 0 is what we count. And he lived 900. So he lived 0 to 930 years. All right. That was when he was born. Now, let's continue this so that you can see. Now, remember, it says that when Seth was born. So when Seth was born, he was only 130 years old, I believe it was. Yep, he was 130 years old when Seth was born. Notice it doesn't mention Cain. It doesn't mention Cain because Cain was banished from God and was not part of the godly line that God established. Abel was going to be of the godly line, probably. Cain could have been, but he wasn't because he chose not to be. So Cain was not part of the godly line. So that's why Cain is not mentioned, even though Cain was born before Seth. But Seth was the beginning of God's line of ascension or succession and what leads up to Noah. All right. So if we continue this right here, we can see that Seth was born in 130 and then he died in year 10. he died in year 1042. And it says that all the days of Seth were 912 years. So if we go verses 6 through, let's see here, 6 through 8, it looks like Seth lived 912 years. Seth lived 912 years. All right. So, of course, Adam and Seth overlap. That's father and son. That's pretty normal. We get that. That's kind of a normal thing. We keep going on. Go on to the next one. Now, here we have Enos. Okay. Or some people pronounce it as Enoch, but it doesn't matter because Enos is what we have in our thing. But he was born in the year 225. So Seth lived 912 years. But Seth lived from year 130 to 1042 and lived 912 years. Now we're going down to the next one where we have Enos. And so we've got verses 9 through 11. And we have Enos. And Enos lived from, you can see, from year 235. From year 235 to year 1140 from the beginning of the world. All right. And I do want to give a shout out to the company who did this. I believe, let me remind myself what the name of the company was. Let me remind myself. Just going to open this up so I can read it. Conformingtojesus.com. So this is from there. I do want to give credit where it's due because I am using their chart, their underlying chart here. Did a lot of this work for me. I started to do it last night or yesterday, and I went, wait a second, I bet there's a chart out there. And this was one of the best ones I saw. Now, I'm the one who created made it into a graphic. Theirs is just the full-on chart with all the dates and everything on it. But we got from years 235 to 1140 with Enos. And so Enos lived for a whole of 905 years. All right. And this is for those people who really, really get into genealogies. You can understand why this is really important, because understanding where God started and where God ends things is so important. And we're going to see some relevance to this. And there's a little, like what we would call a mini story in the middle of these genealogies, or nearer to the end, actually. So you can see all these guys are living like 900 years. Well, so far, 900 years. All right. Going on to Canaan. So Canaan is in verse 12. And this is Canaan spelled with, like, as in the name Cain and Abel, C-A-I-N, with an N on the end of it. So Canaan, now Canaan lived, and let's put that up here. Let's reveal that part. So Canaan lived from 325, and let me go back to my source here, which makes it easier. Canaan was born in 325, and he died in 1235. So 325 to 1235. And if you see here, let's see here, and Canaan lived 910 years. So Canaan lived 910. These are all pretty box standard, and that was through verse 14. Now we carry on to verse 15, and we've got his son, Mahalalel. And we can see that Mahalalel was born in the year 395, and he lived until the year 1290. Now, what I want to point out to you is that we've got Adam with his son, his grandson, his great-grandson. Now we're on to the great-grandson, and Adam's still alive. Adam's completely alive at this point. And yeah. All right, so this is verses 15 through 17. Mahalalel. Can you imagine naming your child Mahalalel? That's a big, I wonder if they called him Matt. Anyway, or Mahala. He lived 895 years. All right, so he lived for 895 years. Right? And by the way, guys, I am actually like writing it out like this, so you will have a separate resource as well for this. So Mahalalel lived 895 years. Jared, his son, was born. Oh, let me go back to that so you guys can see that. Here we go. Ready? Oh, sorry, we didn't do Mahalalel. My apologies. There's Mahalalel's timeline. And now let's talk about Jared. Now, Jared is a name that we actually find very common. And so it's very interesting. So now we're on to Jared in verse 18. And it is basically it's giving about 3 verses. 18 through 20 is all about Jared. And Jared, as you can see, was born in the year 460. So he lived from year 460 to 1422. All right? All right. Now, what makes this interesting is now we're going to actually go on after Jared, and we have a specialty guy coming in. He's doing a specialty appearance here. All right? Our specialty appearance is for one night only. Well, not one night only, but is Enoch. Now, keep in mind, Adam is still alive when Enoch is born. So we are already on verse 21. And Enoch lived 65 years and begat Methuselah. And Enoch walked with God. All right, so here's some things. This is our little mini story. We're going to write down when he lived. All right, so that was 21 through 24. Enoch gets a little bit. So Enoch actually was born in 622. So 622 to 987. Whoa, what happened to Enoch? What happened with Enoch? And of course, you probably... Oh, goodness. Yes. So you're like, wait a second, what happened with Enoch? Enoch walked with God, and he begat Methuselah 300 years and begat sons. So first of all, he lived 65 years and he begat Methuselah. So he had his son at 65 years old. Most of these other guys were waiting until they were 100 or plus to have their children. And so that's what makes Enoch a little bit different, but there's a reason. Because after he begat Methuselah, he only lived 300 years and begat sons and daughters. And all the days of Enoch were 365 years. So he only lived 365 years. But why is this? Well, our clue here is in verse 24. This is our little mini story in here. 365. And here's our mini story. It's a mini story because it appears in only one verse. There is literally one additional verse that Enoch gets in the Bible that shows who he is, what he is, and what's important. And Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. There are only a few people in the Bible. There's actually only 3 people in the Bible that we are aware of that did not actually die. Even Christ doesn't hold this. And when Christ was in his transfiguration, a lot of people believe that Enos was the 3rd man during the transfiguration. And the reason is because Enos, Elijah, and Moses were all people that did not die. They were all taken by God, meaning God literally reached down and removed them from the earth. Now, I don't mean like with an actual hand, but God specifically reached down and said, I want you with me. Now, in the case of Moses and Elijah, it was at the end of their what would be considered a normal lifespan. And it was a humane thing in the case of Moses because he didn't die. He was taken by God And we'll talk about that when we get to Exodus. But Enos here is the first. So we've been talking a lot of the first. Well, Enos is the first one who was taken by God, meaning that but the reason is Enos walked with God and he was not, for God took him. It's just all of a sudden like he walked with God. He went for a walk with God and all of a sudden he just didn't come home. And everybody knew that it was because God took him. And it was because of his godliness, because of who he was and such a godly man, that God just said, no, you get to come with me. You don't have to deal with any of the trials, the troubles, the difficulties of this world. None of that's for you, Enos. Come with me. And he took him. Now we move on in verse 25. Oh, I need to write the notes here. Enoch. I don't know why I said Enos. Enoch. 6:22. Enoch was taken by God at an early age, because the days of him were only, and notice it doesn't say that he died, whereas the rest of them, it says that they lived these many years and begat sons and daughters, and then they died. Notice it doesn't say that about Enoch. Enoch did not die. It says these were his years, though, 365 years. All right? Enoch was taken by God because he walked with God. I do think that sometimes I want to pause on this for another minute or two. I do think sometimes on earth here, we sometimes look at people who die young or die early, and we think that it's just a matter of sin in the world. And sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's actually an evidence of their godliness and their communion with God, that God's like, you are so in tune with me. Let's make this a face-to-face conversation. And it seems like with Enoch, that's what happened here, is that Enoch was in such a close communion with God that God was like, I think we need to do this face-to-face. We've done everything we can from this perspective. Let's take this to the next level. And you definitely can see this with some people. I definitely saw it in my grandfather, even though my grandfather did live a full life. He was not taken early. But when he was taken, it was as if, okay, let's bring this face to face. Let's bring this full circle. Let's do this. Let's do this face to face. I want to be with you, and I want it to be with you personally. And yeah, we're gonna take this the next level. And so as we're continuing here, so Enoch, you can see Enoch actually died shortly after Adam died, because Adam died in the year 930 and Enoch died in the year 987. So only 57 years later, Enoch was taken only 57 years after Adam passed. But Adam saw Enoch. So now we have son, grandson, great-grandson, great-great-grandson, great-great-great-grandson, great-great-great-great-great. 5 greats-grandson, Adam's around for. All right? And to the 6th power. So great-great-great-great-great-great-grandson, Adam's still there. And this is our next one. This is Methuselah. And Methuselah lived 187 years. So while his dad had kids at, 65? Enoch had, at 65. Methuselah waited to start his family. Like, he was like, nope, I got plenty of times. And he waited till he was 187 years old before he had his son Lamech. All right, so we're in verse 25 here. All right, let's see here, verse 25. And Methuselah, now you may know the name Methuselah. And the reason that you might know the name Methuselah, because all the days of Methuselah were 969 years. So Methuselah lived First of all, the date that he lived from. Nope, that's wrong. Sorry about this, guys. Something just happened and it closed down my resource. All right. Because you can see this on a big screen. I cannot. All right. So, Methuselah was born in 687. Goodness. Oh, there we go. All right. Excellent. Nope. Nope, nope, nope. Trying to move this screen over so I can see it better. All right. Methuselah was born in 687. So he lived from 687 to 1656. 1656. And he lived 969 years. Now, why do you know the name Methuselah? Anybody want to hazard a guess? If you've heard the name Methuselah before, why do you know the name Methuselah? Well, partly because he is the man. He is the oldest man to have lived ever. You can see Jared came close at 962. But so far, Methuselah at 969 has the win. And if I am correct, and I believe so, because I was looking at this before, that's the longest anybody has ever lived. And that's why when we say, oh, you got to be as old as Methuselah. Oh, you're as old as Methuselah. Let's see here. Let me make sure. Because I want to make sure about Lamech. I am wrong. I apologize. Oh, no, wait. Yeah, no. I was right. Yep. Lamech was the son of Methuselah, and he did not live very long. But we're going to talk about why that is. But I want you to note the date that Methuselah died. 1656. That's really, really important. Because we're going to talk about that in a minute here. Because it has a lot of importance and it has a lot of significance. All right? So, Methuselah died in 1656. And he lived 969 years. He is the man who is the oldest man to ever have lived, is Methuselah. All right? So, let's see here. That's verses 25 through, my apologies. 969 years, 25 to 27. All right. He's the oldest ever man. All right. And that's going to become significant in chapter 6 or 7 when we get to that. All right. Verses 28. Here we go. And Lamech lived 182 years and begat a son, and he called his name Noah. So first of all, we got Lamech here now, who is the son of Methuselah. And let's put this up. We can see Lamech. All right, there we go. And Lamech was born in the year 874, I believe. Let's look at this. Yeah, 874. Now, what's fascinating about this, Lamech lived from 874 until 1651. So, a little bit tragic. He actually died before his dad. Now, obviously, Enoch was taken before his dad and before his granddad. It's like Enoch was taken before everybody except for Adam. Adam had passed when Enoch was taken. But Adam is the only one of this whole line to have died before Enoch was taken. So that's kind of interesting. And when we get to Lamech, Lamech was born 874. He was born and Adam was still alive. So Lamech lived from 874 to 1651. And Lamech, oops, I need to go to here, lived 777 years. So he only lived 777 years. Now, this is significant because there's something really important that happened in 1656. All right, before we talk about when Noah was born, which, by the way, if you want to write this down, 28 to 31 is Lamech, verses 28 to 31, and verse 32 is Noah, and Noah was born in 1056. If you take the counting from the beginning, now we're counting forward at the moment. There is going to be a point when we're talking about genealogies later on this channel, and we'll be counting from a backwards point of view, and we'll be looking at the age of the world in general, but not right now. All right? But I want to show you something really fascinating and important. I want you to remember, Methuselah died in 1656. Noah was born in 1056, and the flood happened in 1656. Coincidence? We think not. Because Methuselah, the son of the most godly man in the world, it looks like, because Enoch was taken by God. He never even had to go through the pain of death, never had to go through the suffering of old age. Well, not in his time period. That wasn't old age. I mean, he died very young. He died like half of what everybody else, or less. I'm trying to think. The only one who he lived more than half of was Lamech. But notice also that Lamech died before the flood. And Methuselah died. Most people would agree, and most people believe, that God was waiting for the flood. Noah had been building the ark. We'll talk about that for a long time. And it was like God was waiting for Methuselah to die before the flood. Because when we get into chapter 6, we're going to talk about what happened. Even though this is the godly line, we do have something in contrast to that that's about to come. And that is evil ruling over the world. While these men in particular were godly, not all of their offspring were, and not all of the women that they married were. In fact, quite a few of these men had a lot of children, sons and daughters. They were populating the world like they were told, be fruitful, multiply, and replenish the earth. But unfortunately, a lot of those children were not living a life towards God. And we suspect that they were living a life towards God. But one of the things you can look at here, if we look at this, Noah was born after Adam died. And it's kind of significant. Noah was the first one of this line that was born after Adam died. And it wasn't until Noah's lifetime that we have some of these statements made. And we're going to reference back to that. Today is more about a background story day with the little story of Enoch thrown in there for fun. Enoch being taken by God, being the first man that God just said, no, I really want to have private time with you. I really want to have you with me. And of course, we've got Methuselah being the oldest man to have ever lived. But this whole chapter is pre-story, and we're going to refer back to some of this when we get into chapter 6, and we get into the idea of sin and death and how it's visited on the world. And how it's visited in God's eyes. So, bear with me on this, because we do not have Noah's death date yet, but we do know that he waited until he was 500 years old before he begat Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And that's significant as well. And we will talk about that on Thursday. Tomorrow, we are actually covering something interesting in regards to the books of the Bible and helping with some techniques to learn the books of the Bible, understand how it's laid out, understand what the different sections are so that you can really get a good grasp of the Bible and see the Bible books in an overview, because it makes it really easy. My husband made a statement to me about how he found it difficult to know which books fell into which categories and where to find them. He didn't always know when a pastor or someone said, and I didn't even think about this. And this is why my husband is such a great resource for this channel, because he keeps me really well grounded in what you guys need to know, because he reminds me all the time of what young Christians are going through, people who are just growing in Christ, and the things, you don't know what you don't know. He didn't know some things, and I'll just say something very casually, and he's like, what are you talking about? And that triggers something in me to go, oh, in fact, not only did you guys pick Genesis, which is why we're in Genesis, but I was really glad that you picked Genesis for us to be the next book to go to after 2 Peter, because my husband was asking a lot of questions about some of the Bible stories, and they are all in Genesis. So I was like, this is perfect. This must be God ordained. So very excited about the fact we're going through Genesis and getting some of these baseline stories, making sure you're grounded in the baseline stories, because these baseline stories set the background for Christ in the New Testament. And as we build on this, you're going to see this more and more and more. And today, these genealogies are really going to build on tomorrow and what we have for tomorrow and the continuing story. So it's like we're doing a little bit of a Christian soap opera. So, dun, 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 stay tuned for Thursday when we continue the saga of Noah and Methuselah and what's going on. But tomorrow we're going to look at the books of the Bible and do a whole little Wisdom and Worship Wednesday that kind of steps aside into a Bible study area that might really help you guys to visualize where certain books are, how certain books are, and what the purposes of certain books of the Bible are, which might help you to pick when it comes time to the end of Genesis. I know it's going to be a while, but when it comes to the end of Genesis and you guys have a voice in picking which book we go on to next, it'd be good for you to know something about the books and kind of what their basic ideas and themes are, so that you understand what you're voting for. It's kind of like politicians. You should know what you're voting for when you vote. All right. So guys, thanks so much for joining with me today. I know this might seem like a really awkward, weird way to stop, but this is the backstory to what's coming. So we will be referencing back to this. So I hope you took great notes today. And like I said, if you are a member, you have access to these notes through your membership in that membership portal. So any questions on what we were talking about today? I'm going to give you about 1 or 2 minutes and go ahead and put a question in the chat. If you are, I can see multiple people are watching today. So do me a favor and just say hi. I'd love to say hi back to you so I know exactly who it is. You don't have to, but I always love to. If you wonder why I'm looking up this direction, it is because I am looking at my screen that my husband so lovingly put up for me quite a while ago. We actually did go quite a long way today, but that is, of course, because there's 32 verses in this chapter too. So that's quite a bit. Anybody have any questions? No questions? No questions? Going, gone. And as soon as I see my hand up on the video in front of me, questions, no questions, then I know you guys have had every chance and every opportunity. Because there's a little bit of a delay between what you see and what I see. All right, there we are. We're at an end today, guys. Thanks so much for joining me. It's been a pleasure, and hopefully you've gotten something out of this. But stay tuned for Thursday. Of course, tomorrow we're doing that specialty Wisdom and Worship Wednesday. But join me Thursday for the continuing story of Genesis. Bye for now.
You can have all this world. Give me Jesus. When I am alone, oh, when I am alone. sun.